Hey guys, what's up? It's Neonta Williams, Black Alabamians for Education, and you have tuned into the Advocates Chair. And guys, listen, I am so excited that we have created this platform to be able to transfer information to families all across the community, all across the state about educational advocacy, professional careers, and the importance of the baseline of a quality education. So I want to kind of start out talking about what was the one thing in my life that was at this sort of pivot moment that required me or demanded me or tapped into my purpose for being a founder of an organization. Like, what caused me to say, I am going to cash out my 401k. I am going to take my savings. I am going to look at, if I quit this job, how many more paychecks can I line up before I take all of that with my faith to say, let's start a organization. And now we've birthed this Advocates Chair. And so when I share with you all about what caused all of that to happen, I was living in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a native of Gaston, Alabama, and was living in Birmingham for a number of years, proud graduate of Miles College with a degree in social work, but I also was a student athlete. I also am a Army veteran, and that's important because during my time as I was exiting out of service, I started officiating volleyball, and then when I got back to Birmingham, I started officiating basketball. I started at the middle school level, and I loved it. Very first year I did it, I fell in love with it. And then I decided that I would invest in myself and start going to camps so that I could grow and make it to the collegiate level. In fact, the first time I refereed, I said, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA. Absolutely wanted to go all the way to the top. And of course, education has always been important to me. I am a first generation college student. I've been blessed to be supported by my family and friends. And so I started to marry what I was seeing on the basketball court versus what I was seeing in on the collegiate level of where are the athletes. So I'm seeing these great athletes playing basketball in the YMCAs, playing in the Boys and Girls Club, playing in the rec leagues, but I was not seeing them on the collegiate level. So I'm not seeing them in Division III, Division II, definitely not Division I, and not even at the junior college level, and not even in NAIA. So when you talk about what the academic requirements are, they're not as stringent as independent NAIA basketball, junior college level basketball, Division III, II, and I. The standards get a lot higher. What I found was there were a number of great athletes saying, hey, what's up, Miss Ralph? What's going on? And I'm like, hey, what's up? Where are you going to go to school? Where are you in school at? And they would say, oh, Miss Ralph, I couldn't make the ACT score that I needed, or I could not pass the exit exam, in which Alabama had as something that was mandatory that students had to take, that was based on the 8th grade level. And they didn't take it until their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, with 2 opportunities each year. So we're talking 6 times to pass an exam that's based on the 8th grade level. And the math wasn't mathing. And so, I was like, wait, what's going on? Because I'm thinking about my own personal story. And I'm also thinking about how these students are missing the opportunity to at least become a student athlete on the collegiate level. So fast forward in the story, got involved in this educational advocacy work back in 2013, 2015. There were really strong parent choice laws that were passed in Alabama that afforded folks the opportunity to place their children in an academic environment that best suited their learning styles. After those laws were written and passed, and I was blessed to be a part of that sort of policy legislative process, those national organizations left the state of Alabama, and it left a huge gap in who's going to be here in Alabama, continuing to educate families, community members, and stakeholders about what our lawmakers have made available to families in Alabama. So that takes me back to the beginning where I shared, hey, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee working. My heart has never left the state of Alabama. It's never left home. I was born here, raised here, educated here. Even my master's degree is in the state of Alabama. The only thing that I received outside of that was my time in the military, my time as a U.S. Army soldier woman. And so when I used all of my courage and all of my resources and all of my everything to start Black Alabamians for Education in 2017, I hate that I'm doing a little smack, but just keeping it real, y'all. So, just keeping it like transparent on who I am. So when I started this organization, what I envisioned for us was to continue to sort of serve as an expansion to what the Black Alliance for Educational Options has started, but also with its own founders, Alabama twist. It is so important to me that we have authentic relationships in the community with our parents. There's a lot of conversation around school choice. And so I have shied away from this school choice conversation or saying that I'm an advocate for school choice because choice is, traditional public, it's private school, it's charter school, it's virtual school, it's homeschool school, it's blended schools. And now, in some states, it's actually micro schools. And so what happens is you'll have parents or individuals who will choose, let's say, private school as an option. And so that is their school of choice. That is their option. And they are not interested in any other K-12 delivery system. And so you have folks who become married to that system as opposed to the idea that it's a choice. And so I wanted this organization to exist for the purpose of us being a parent choice organization, which means we have equipped and armed ourselves with all of the lawful information that people in the community need to know about so that then the parents can choose what is the best option for their child, whether that is a traditional public school, whether that is that private school or a home school or virtual school or blended school or even a micro school, but knowing, and I think that's the empowerment piece, empowering parents with that information so that they know I do have a choice. And so a parent today, as you all well know, and if you don't know, I'm letting you know that traditional parenting, a mother or father giving birth to a child is not as common as we think it is today. There are a lot of grandparents and great-grandparents and aunts and uncles that are rearing children, maybe that they did not birth. And so when we think about what that looks like, that's why it's really important for the work that we do here at this organization that we sort of stand on our foundation of being a choice organization, but not just school choice, but parent choice, because parents should be informed and empowered with that information. So I love, sharing with you all. And I feel like I can hear the audience saying, yes, clock that T. So really proud of myself for having the courage to step out on faith and do this. And so, you know what? That's round one. I'm coming back for round two. Let's take a break. So we're back on the Advocates Chair. I said that was part one, and I'm back with part two. Before I talk to you about some of the challenges that I think that students are facing in Alabama when it comes to receiving a quality K-12 education, I certainly just want to talk about how grateful I am that we have this platform available to us as the Advocates Chair and what advocacy means and why it's so important. We can't have a platform like this and not really be in tune and tapped into the community. And so when I am prepared, as I am sharing with you, we're about to answer your question around, because this is the audience asking me these questions. So when I am answering your question around, what are some of the challenges that our students are facing today that hinder them from receiving a quality K-12 education? Full transparency. I think it starts with our parents. That is a part of the challenge as to why our students are not receiving a quality K-12 education. So what, Neonta? Ooh, I felt somebody say, what? What you mean? Why are you talking about the parents? Because our children are coming to school in kindergarten and they are not prepared with the fundamental things that they should already know, i.e. name, numbers, colors, address, even their own name, having had some kind of experience with a pen or a pencil in their hand. We are living in an area where digital technology has taken over. And so we have iPads, we have tablets, we have cell phones. And so we have all of these digital devices at our fingertips. And so we have taken away the fundamentals, and those fundamentals really do matter. And so also, so thinking about a teacher who is prepared to teach a third grader, elementary school teacher has gone to school, gotten his or her degree, and they're prepared to teach students on whatever grade level at the elementary level. And let's say I am a fifth grade elementary school teacher and I am ready for the school year to start. I inherit my class of fifth graders only to find out that my fifth graders are not on fourth grade level ready to be grown to fifth grade level, but they in fact are on the second grade level. And so we have created sort of this system. I talk about a system of perpetual poverty, but we've created a system whereby we are promoting students to the next grade and they are not necessarily meeting all of those standards. And so teachers are prepared to teach at a tier 1 level because there are tier 1, 2, and 3 standards. But teachers are prepared to teach at a tier 1 level, but they're inheriting students who may be on tier 3. And so how do I grow? And I'm speaking third person for our educators, but how does a educator grow a student who is 2 to 3 grade levels behind? And then you think about an entire classroom. So when we talk about what are some of those challenges that hinder our students from accessing a quality or a high quality K-12 education, it really starts with the fundamentals. So that is one arm of it for me. It is the parent piece. No parents are not expected to actually teach their children, but they are expected to position their children with the right programs, the right community resources, the right family members who can support them in making sure that not only they are foundationally prepared, but that they are also prepared even as they continue to matriculate throughout their kindergarten through 12th grade educational experience. And so, and then when we get to our middle school and our high school students, middle school, reality is, y'all, we know, you're becoming a teenager, preteen, teen. And so then the student themselves can decide if they want to be a kid or if they want to actually, be a little bit more mature and start to embrace the idea that they are about to be a teenager. And so some of those challenges come, life happens, puberty happens, things happen, but I'm saying that because that all also has an effect on the academic experience. You have girls who are trying to impress boys, boys who are trying to impress girls, and the sort of challenging each other from the academic standpoint has kind of migrated away. And so when we think about, what this looks like and how does this also play a role in a quality K-12 education, I don't believe that it's so much our educators are not prepared to offer a quality education. It is just some of those dynamics that come along with our students. When you talk about some of the neighborhood challenges that are brought with the students to the school, one thing I can tell you is that a parent, when parents send their children to school, they are sending their very best. It's not like they are sending, the least and then keeping the best at home. They're sending to our educational delivery system everything they have. And so our educators and our leaders, our principals, our superintendents have to be prepared to inherit everything that a parent sends. And so I just believe, and I think it's the social worker in me that helps me understand sort of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If our children are coming from impoverished communities, from low income communities, they're concerned about, a warm coat on their back or food at the table or a roof over their head. It does have an impact on how they come prepared to learn, right? And then some of these community circumstances that can have an impact. And then what happens is we now have our students moving from middle school to high school. And there are now, according to the state of Alabama, there are about 9 college and career readiness standards that the state now mandates that a student graduated from high school must have at least one of those CCR standards met. And so when we talk about that, we now have sort of workforce development conversations. So now it's this challenge of, am I going on a college college path, or am I going on a career path? Am I going in the trade schools, or am I going on to a 2-year or a 4-year institution in order to, begin where I plan to experience my financial gain for the rest of my life? And so students are confronted with that, just like all of us were. It's not like our students are experiencing something different than what we were. We called it trade school when I was in school. Now it's a college and or career path. And so those opportunities are there, but then who really, really knows what they want to do at 16, 17 years old for the rest of their lives? Sometimes there are challenges that can be different. And then we also have to talk about, again, answering this question around what hinders our students from a quality K-12 education. Sometimes it's funding. Sometimes it's safety in the building. Sometimes it is those community dynamics. And so, I definitely want to keep it real on the advocates chair. I don't sit here with my legs crossed, talking with my hands and trying to make it, seem like it is that systems are all put together. There are a lot of systems that are not put together. And that's why it requires parental engagement. It requires community involvement. It requires our faith-based community to be involved. It requires our business community to be involved. It also requires our students to be advocates for themselves, to speak up for themselves, and to be a part of this process for individuals who are making those decisions for them. So numbering factors that plays a role in access to quality education. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about another one, even home ownership. A lot of folks may not even think about that, but our property taxes from being a homeowner is what those property taxes are what go to the city, and the city, in fact, then is turning those resources over into our local school districts so that our students can have access to extracurriculum activities, so that we can have access to hiring qualified teachers, for paying our teachers what they deserve, and also facilities. And so when you talk about, being in communities where maybe there are a lot of renters as opposed to home owners, the right investments, the right financial investments are not being made in some of our low-income, working-class communities, which play a huge role in students having access to a high-quality K-12 education, because lack of resources is lack of programming, lack of opportunity, lack of exposure. And so that is the answer to question number 2 in our equitable, high-quality K-12 accessible options for our students. Neonta Williams, Black Alabamians for Education, and you are tuned into the Advocates Chair podcast, created to be a virtual vehicle of transformational information for families, not just in the state of Alabama, but all across the country when it comes to parental engagement and involvement. And so questions being asked around how do we navigate, let me stop clapping. How do we navigate some of these systems where we're working with other nonprofit organizations, other businesses, other entities that may or may not be aligned with this school choice or this parent choice sort of mantra? And I think it's a great question being asked. We have 7 core values that we operate by. And one of our core values is actually diversity through a narrow strip of unity. And so when I love to tie in our core values to the question that was posed, because, when you are out here doing this work, everyone is not going to agree with you. In fact, everyone should not agree. You should receive a little bit of pushback. You should receive a little bit of challenging of the status quo, of certain perceptions about how things work. But the question is, how do we navigate through that? And so years ago, I learned in my advocacy days that we have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. We have permanent issues. And so where our issues align, that's how we align and work with other individuals. Now, full transparency, sometimes your girl can't always sit at those tables, because I can get frustrated, when I feel like I'm at the table advocating for our Black families. And again, we are Black Alabamians for Education. We do advocate specifically for Black families, but we are inclusive of all. But when I am at certain tables and I know that we are advocating on behalf of students and children, And parents and families, sometimes I have to take a step away. Sometimes I have to set my personality aside because I also sort of operate by not getting personality over purpose. And when you're in community work, when you're in the field of nonprofit and you are trying to provide a service for those that are less than, or those not necessarily less than, but those who may not have the level of knowledge base or time to advocate on behalf of their children, and that's why we formed ourselves, then you have to be willing to sit at that table. There are some times when you walk away from those tables and you don't necessarily get your agenda across, but you do find that those lines of diversity through a narrow strip of unity. And so, what we've done in years past, from a policy standpoint, there have been times where you've been in Montgomery, which is our state capital here in Alabama. You're working with legislators, and on one issue, we're all on the same side of the aisle when it comes to quality education, when it comes to increasing parental choice options. But then right after we have a press conference about that, they'll turn around and there'll be another press conference on the backside that is about, anti-Medicaid or not increasing Medicaid or Medicare or, SNAP benefits for families who may need them in the state of Alabama. We absolutely disagree with that. We think that families should be able to get the types of supports that they need. And so you won't see us in a photo op. You won't see us in an op-ed. You won't see us in a conversation, aligning with those particular ways of thinking or the ways that our government chooses to function in Alabama. And again, it just goes back to diversity through a narrow strip of unity. So in this work, we must have the ability to sit down at the table, to be diplomatic, to be able to have conversations with individuals, to agree and disagree, and then disagree to agree on where it is, because another core value of ours is caring and respectful relationships. And so it is so important that we function with caring and respectful relationships. We may not agree on everything, as I just said, but it is a way to say that. And plus, we don't know it all. I think the best way to learn is to commit to being a lifelong learner, and a person's perspective matters. Their experience matters. In fact, we exist because of my own personal experience, as I said in the beginning. So who am I to sit at a table and say that only my perspective matters and that I only want to get accomplished, or that we as an organization and a team only want to get accomplished what our agenda is? That doesn't move the needle forward for the families that we serve across the state of Alabama, for the tables that we have the privilege of sitting at. Again, in full transparency, it's not always easy to sit at those tables, right? Sometimes I walk into rooms, and my team and I, in my very, very early formative days of this organization, one of my fellow team members, we would walk into boardrooms. If there was seating for 10 individuals, there would be 8 non-Black individuals, meaning 8 white people at the table, and seat for 2 of us. And oftentimes we would be referred to as they, them, and y'all. And it's like, excuse me, I have more alphabets behind my last name, and so does she, than you probably do. And so what we learned years ago, and you should know this too, that while an education is important, acquiring an education is important, but it is, who do you represent when you sit at that table? And so when we talk about equitable options, and equity for us starts at the table when we're in the room having conversations about what the public needs to know. Another difficulty about being in this space, although that wasn't the question, but you can't talk about equity, in my opinion, and not talk about the challenges that come with that, because it's a word today. In most recent last couple of years, we've been forced to whitewash the word, to remove it, meaning whitewash it, cleaning it out. We no longer need for equity to exist. We have had our government, dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the reality is we are a better country. We are a better state. We are a better organization when we are able to hear from varying perspectives from across the state of Alabama, across our communities, and even the people who sit at the table and make these experiences, and not make these experiences, excuse me, but make these policies that we put in place and support these opportunities for our students to have a equitable education. So as I talk more just about what those challenges have been and what they look like, we need people who recognize that this exists, but are still willing to go to the table, either bring a chair or take a chair, have a seat, and use your voice. Have courage. Be willing to say and do what needs to be said and be done, even if you're standing alone. And so sometimes as an organization, we stand alone. We just because we are skin folk doesn't mean we are kinfolk in our way of thinking and our perspective and how things are going. But we know, and here's what, and this wasn't asked, but I feel like saying this. Here's what I know, and why I know our work is important. We get a lot of pushback about being an organization of choice, and particularly an organization of choice around charter schools. But here's what I know. That charter school legislation was passed in 2015, and this is 2025. And so for 10 years, it's been in existence. And in Alabama, there are nearly 10,000 students. I'm going to say that again. In Alabama, there are nearly 10,000 students who are taking advantage of the charter school legislation, which means if there were, let's say, 2 kids for one household, there are at least 5,000 households that have said, I want my child to have access to a varying option. It works for me. And so who are we as an organization, or who as the community, to tell a parent that they should not have that option? At the same time, we have our traditional public schools who have tens of thousands of students that we're serving on a day-to-day basis. And so people should have access to choice. So we don't shy away from the fact that being a voice at the table for equitable, high quality K-12 options is what we should be doing. So guys, Neonta Williams with Black Alabamians for Education, and you have been listening in to the Advocacy Chair. I really hope that I have shared something from my personal experience, but also from my heart's interest in us establishing this Advocacy Chair to get the word out. We should use every platform to equip, inform, and empower families across not just the state of Alabama, but across the country on why K-12 education is important. You may not be a parent today, but tomorrow you could be a parent. You may not be in a situation today where you need to consider a varying option for your child to receive a quality K-12 education today, but tomorrow it could be a different story. And so we should all equip ourselves with this kind of information. So continue to check us out. Continue to follow us, Black Alabamians for Education. And you have been tuned in to the Advocacy Chair. I'm Neonta Williams, and I'm closing out with cheers to the cheer.